So, welcome back to Explore Your Dark Side. My name is Stephanie Bosch, and today is another great interview for Ditch Your Mask with Isla. And I'm so pleased you're here.
Thank
you. I will give you a proper introduction just now so people know who you are, what you do, and I would say what very interesting project and mission you are following. Isla helps shy men and women improve their social confidence so that they can create opportunity and authentic connection anywhere, anytime, and turn boring journeys on the tube into exciting, memorable moments, turn fear of group conversations into valuable networking opportunities, and transform small talk at work into adventurous, stimulating conversations. I was just thinking, I think everyone who has ever been in London on the tube knows how this situation is and what a challenge you took on. So chapeau for that.
Thanks.
Isla combines her experience in coaching, improvisation, and her own personal development to deliver one-to-one coaching and group workshops on topics such as body language, authentic conversations, identity shaping, mindset, and more. Isla's life mission is to turn London into a socially connected city where strangers speak on buses and share their wildest dreams, and friends ask the question, "How are you?" and they really mean it.
Yeah.
Wow, so much juicy stuff to talk about. I'm so pleased you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and who knows what we'll talk about. It's completely unplanned and authentic.
Yes, indeed. And this with a German. So I already said, London buses, London tube, that's usually the place where if any tourists speak up, because it's usually people who don't live here, they get this death stare, don't talk, don't be loud. What are you going to do about it?
So yeah, let's first talk about the common problem or the common challenge that everyone shares in this situation. The autopilot method is to just get on the tube, you're going somewhere, you sit down, you look at your phone, or you look down, or you put your headphones in, you read a newspaper, you read a book, you go and do something instantly, or you just be with yourself. And you definitely don't make eye contact, you definitely don't say hello to the person next to you, and God forbid you ask someone how their day's going.
You get killed.
And it's just so, when I say that out loud, I know, and I'm sure anyone watching this knows how ridiculous that sounds, because we're a bunch of humans on a planet living together, and we're closer than ever in this tiny little tube carriage, and we're all bunched together with, people's armpits just in your face and all sweaty, and it's, why, for me, the question is, why get on a tube and make a kind of sweaty, boring journey boring? Why make it, a bad situation when you could make it a great, connected, fun situation and talk to those people that are all around you? All these people, that's so mind-blowing that you're on a tiny little vessel, and in that carriage, there's more than one person that's different to you. They have a different perspective on the world, and you're not talking to them. It's just mind-blowing.
You know what I find the funniest though? It's those people sometimes are on the same way to go to a networking event or something. They sometimes, I had events where I would walk in with a person, we were literally going to the same event, right? It was a networking event. So you're meant to talk to other people. And people would talk to each other until they entered the room. And I'm like, what? It's funny, but it's so true. It's day-to-day life here, and it's not only London. It's in, I would say, most cities, in villages, each other. But yeah, it's a massive project though. So again, chapeau. And I think a truly important mission. So you say like authentic, you know, connections and authentic conversations. What does that mean for you?
This is such a good question, because I'm sure it's becoming a very overused word, both of them, authentic and connection. And it's one of those words that can mean something different to everyone. So for me, if I focus on the word authenticity first, I've been exploring it a lot lately. Actually, it's very fresh. I was exploring it just yesterday. For me, it means behaving in a situation according to my needs and my feelings in the moment. So for me, this means not feeling social pressure to behave in a certain way. So for example, if I'm in a workshop and everyone's asked to stand up, and suddenly I feel dizzy, you know, I need to sit down, even though the exercise requires standing up, I will just say, I won't even ask. I'll say, look, I need to sit down because I feel dizzy. So I don't need to ask permission to be myself. In another way, in a more maybe a different situation. So if I'm in a conversation with a close friend and they ask me to come to their birthday party tomorrow, and I'm really overwhelmed, I'm very stressed, I will say to them, it will not make me happy to come to a birthday party at the moment because I'm very overwhelmed. There's just a siren going by, so just let crazy London life on. So if they ask me to come to their birthday party, I will not go if it doesn't make me feel happy, and I will explain that to them also. So it's not a case of saying, no, leave me alone. It's a case of no, and this is why. I hope you can understand. And I guess, so those are certain, you know, relatable situations where it may come up, and where I realize it can be challenging, and what I've explored in this area of how to be authentic in, for example, a work situation. So my friend turned to me and said, okay, what would you be authentic if your boss, I don't have a boss, but let's say your boss said to you, suggested an idea and you didn't like it? Would you just say, I don't like that idea? And this was a really interesting kind of situation to challenge me with. So I thought, okay, that is a really hard one. I don't have an answer for it yet. Of course, I'd love to just speak my mind. And so far, I'd like to say that, yes, I want to say in the moment, maybe the holes I would see in their idea, and this is why I don't think we should do this and we should do this. But I haven't lived that. I can't say that I've done that yet. So that's also me being authentic.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, to be honest, I think for all of us, it's a journey, and, you know, we teach best what we need to learn most. And I think like this label of being authentic is indeed quite often overused. If you look at like Instagram influencers, all of them are very authentic, and then all the pictures are, you know, being done with like filters and Photoshop. But I think it's also a very interesting point, especially so coming from Germany here, like for us it would be quite okay to say, I don't like this idea. You know, we're quite frank in what we do. Obviously there are still politics, but it's very, for me it was very different to come to England and learn also like the culturally acceptable norms, and, you know, how to phrase things if you don't like, you know, like this whole thing around like let's agree to disagree and stuff like this. So I think it's also very challenging in a city where so many different nations get together, you know, to be truly authentic to yourself, but also to your team, your work environment. I mean, we are not just all isolated beings, right? We are like all in a certain kind of system where we operate in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the systems and the rules are in place to help us get clarity and help us function as a society, as a much wider group. So sure, it helps that we have, for example, what we know as small talk and these scripts that we use at the beginning of conversations. people tend to, when they start talking about deeper conversations, they tend to hate small talk, but actually it's there for as a use. It's a tool to help us first feel safe with one another. If I just met you on the street and I asked you, you know, what are your wildest dreams in the next 10 years, we wouldn't feel inclined. Maybe you would if you were feeling really bubbly, but majority of people wouldn't feel inclined to share that so quickly. So small talk in that situation is a system and a tool there. It's in place for a reason. So I realize we've created these systems to be useful. I think it's just good to realize and notice that they're there, and that we don't fall into them, and they don't become the thing that traps us. They become our springboard instead.
Yeah. And it's also, I think it's good to know when to use them and how to use them. I mean, there is, especially with like networking events, you know, there's like loads of coaching workshops, etc., on how to ask more interesting questions when you just meet someone. And I think it's a very interesting way to get to the deeper question without bringing the other person probably in an uncomfortable situation of like, you know, they feel like they have to overshare with like the question, for example, what are your wildest dreams, right? So someone would be like, oh my god, mind your own business, you know, and someone would be like, oh my god, that's really interesting, and you have probably the most interesting conversation ever. So yeah, that's really interesting. You say that for so like your customers, you say like shy man and shy woman, which is, I find, really an interesting field as well. But I mean, like the typical like stereotypical, or like I would say like the stereotype is that shy people, because they're so good listeners, often quite introverted, have so much to say when they dare to say it. Is that something where you would agree, or?
Yes, massively. The people I work with, when we start working together and we start exploring, because of course they become comfortable with me, to start having deeper conversations and be creative, and they have so much to say. They have so much to create, but they don't believe it's interesting. So that's what we start working on at the very beginning, is them believing they have something interesting to share. Of course, if you know, it's almost like they've locked themselves up for years. That's what they've done to their expression. They've just locked it up for so long. So you've hit the nail on the head. They have, in a way, so much to share, or I think everyone has a lot to share, but if they haven't released it for such a long time, it's when they do, it's going to be super fresh, and it's going to be an overflow of information and excitement.
And it's probably also very reflected, you know, it's not just, they don't just think while they say it, but it's also reflected already, and it just probably makes a lot of sense when it comes out, rather than being unstructured and a bit of weird flow. So how do you help them believe in themselves? And because for me, like when you say that, I think one label that comes up immediately is like imposter syndrome. You know, if you have bottled up things and then come on out of your shelf, I think this feeling of being, oh my god, either like having overshared. So I know from myself that I would get like what I call it emotional hangover, because I would get like into physical pain and be like, oh my god, I shared too much. Or I would also, you know, like imposter syndrome is a label I think loads of us have, where we feel unsafe, or like even a bit maybe as a fraud, because you know, what if someone realizes we're not as great because we don't believe in ourselves? Is that something that comes up, or?
Yes, you touched on a lot of areas there. First, with imposter syndrome, I haven't worked with people that have verbalized it in that way. However, yes, it's very, very prevalent in a lot of people, a lot of friends as well. And I've had it too. And I think it still comes back sometimes, where I've noticed with the people I work with, they are an expert in their field. They're an expert in an area that they love. It's a hobby and they've studied it forever. But they don't believe it's interesting to share, or they don't believe they have the right to share it. They're the right person to share it. And kind of what's actually mainly on my mind when you just, asked all those things, you asked, how do you help people get this self-belief? And what I've found is one of the ways I've helped people, I've noticed from doing lots of feedback calls with them and finding out what was useful for them in our coaching together, is first, simply, they enjoy being around me. So it was just, it's so funny. You think, what's great about my work? And it's sometimes not that complicated. It's just you. So the first thing was, I see you as a friend. Like, I enjoy speaking to you and I like your personality in comparison to other people I've worked with. So that was the first thing. Secondly, I've also heard that people I work with are inspired by my journey and things that I've overcome and I'm still overcoming, because it's all a constant process. And so sometimes I think I help people without deliberately trying to. So that's an interesting kind of idea as well, because you try so much to help people, and sometimes you're doing it when you're not trying. So the people I work with are very, very inspired by my approach with my relationships, my friendships, my family, my life, my daily routine, my fears. They're really interested in how I dealt with that constantly and how I am dealing with it. And lastly, what you may be asking about is how I literally help them in coaching. So what's interesting is people will come to me and say what they want, right? I'm sure you know this as a business owner, but they'll ask for the result. So they'll say, I want to be able to walk into a networking event and leave with knowing 10 people, have 10 business cards or opportunities. Or they'll say, I want to be able to go on a date or get a girlfriend. And however much, if I gave them exactly what they thought they wanted, which is a bunch of skills to improve their confidence, that would not be enough. So for me, the first thing I help them with, and what I see as the core element to all of this, is mindset, helping them frame their mindset. And this comes back to what we've been talking about the whole time so far, is self-belief. If I give them a bunch of tools and they don't believe they can use them, or they don't believe that even if they could use them, they're not that great, and they think they're not doing a good job, it's useless. So the answer to your question would be, I help them frame their mindset and dig deeper into those limiting beliefs that hold them back every day. And a lot of us have experienced these. They're limiting beliefs, including I'm not good enough, I'm not interesting, I'm boring, everything I say is stupid. So those kind of beliefs, we dig deep into those and turn them into positive, empowering messages that we can carry throughout our day.
Yeah, I think especially like this, I mean, in the end, I think most of them go back to, I'm not good enough, or, I want to be more perfect than, because I think most of us are scared of judgment or rejection, I think, in the end. And sorry for so many questions in the early, in the last one. So I will try to keep this more precise.
Oh, it's okay.
But well done for like remembering it all. So I'm just like another one. So I'm just wondering, like, I mean, someone who's really shy, is it like very difficult for them to come to you and open up? Because I mean, I wouldn't consider myself as like a very shy person, but I find it very, very uncomfortable opening up about, especially stuff that is not going too well. So how does the first step happen to, to be brave and be authentic about maybe their own like shortcomings or own limitations?
Yeah, so it's a super interesting question, because the question for me is asking me about the different types of people that I work with. And to answer your question first, it's really hard for shy people to work on their shyness, because it's so debilitating that even talking to me is sometimes hard. Talking to a coach is hard. So I've had people schedule calls with me and cancel them because calls make them feel anxious. Half the time it won't meet on video, it will be on the phone. And even then on the phone, it's overwhelming for them. Then in addition, when we meet face-to-face for sessions, that can be emotionally draining. So they may ask for breaks in between our sessions because, you know, whilst I'm coaching them, we're talking about socializing. We are also socializing.
Yes.
And that's
in the most intense way, probably.
Yes, exactly. We're talking about how to talk. And yes, it can be very overwhelming. And but however, you know, the people I work with, because I'm a coach, and I think every coach has a similar situation, you're working with people that are at a stage in their lives where they really want to make change. They're so done with being stuck. They're so done with being the same or dealing with the problem they've had and not doing anything about it. They're just fed up of it, and they're ready. Like, they're so ready to put some effort in and see a tangible change in their life. And they're ready for that uncomfortableness. Like you say, you know, it's uncomfortable to open up. And I think they know that, but that they have a link in their brain suddenly of, if I open up, there's going to be a reward. There's going to be discovery, learning, growth. And those are the people I work with. I couldn't work with the people that they're at a stage just before the people I work with. So they're maybe, I don't know in time, but they may be 2 months, a year, 2 years before the people I work with, where they're just coming to terms with the fact that they're going through something, with the fact that they may feel anxious and awkward in conversations, and they're only just noticing it. And they're at a period of awareness. They're not at a period of, I'm ready to make change. They're not at a period of, this is really frustrating me now, I need to take action. Yeah. And also you talk about shyness. So yeah, I would say I don't work with people that are extremely shy, because there needs to be an element of, there needs to be some ability. So the people I work with, they are comfortable with eye contact, with me at least. They're comfortable with opening up. They're comfortable with a conversation with me as the coach. So I think the people I work with actually identify as shy in certain situations. So they identify as shy at a networking event, or in a group conversation, or, you know, at social events, or in a moment where they pass their neighbor on the stairs and they don't know what to say. So yeah.
I think the last time when we spoke, just because you now said to me, they are not like the super shy, but already like, you know, having the eye contact, etc. I remember the last time we spoke on the phone, it was in your in one of the posts in the Connection Hub. You said that you also have this challenge where you would go with people through London and speak to strangers on the bridge or something. Yeah. So how does that work? So how do you get them to do this?
Okay, so first, to break it down, the way I work with people. So we mentioned at the beginning through your wonderful introduction that I work with people in group workshops, and that's all theory based. So they sit down, it's a bit of practical, but they sit down, it's 10 to 20 people, and I have a whiteboard and I do some talks on a specific topic for 2 hours. And I run them through some exercises and then break down some theory on conversation and social skills. And I present, this is where I'm presenting tools, basically. And they can put a bit of action in their pair work, but it's very, very much tool and theory based. Then there's my one-to-one coaching, which you're asking about, where we start to develop the individual mindset. Like, so I work with them, you know, one-to-one, so we're really delving into who they are and what may be holding them back to getting them to where they want to be. And we do that through either this one-to-one coaching conversation or through a one-to-one live street training where I take them out on the streets. And that's what you're asking about. And we'll do a mix of street training and coaching conversation, depending on what they need, what they're craving at the time. Usually a kind of a mix, a 50-50 mix. And
it's proper field work you're doing there.
Right?
Proper field work.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. And I love it. I wouldn't change it any other way. I only work with people in person, so I never do coaching on the phone or anything. And I love that for now. That's my passion. And so yes, when we go out onto the street, we will start. It always depends where they're at. So I couldn't tell you the typical. The kind of typical session that happens, but I'll try and give you an idea. We'll always start with warming up and framing our mindset that this is a world where we can talk to strangers. So first we'll check in. I'll check in on how they're doing. Then when we start doing the exercise, we will start saying hello to strangers, giving little compliments here and there, or asking for directions, making eye contact, and simple things like that. And we'll go to outdoor spaces, or we'll go to indoor spaces like bookstores and things like that. Then, so depending on what they're working on, I'll always make sure what they want to get out of the session. We'll then deviate from there. It's depending on who they are and what their goals are. So, for example, my last session, my client really wants to work on getting to a more meaningful place in his conversations. And we were in the bookstore, and he would do maybe 2 to 3 conversations, then check in with me, let me know what's happened. And he really wanted to basically get away from small talk, get away from talking about facts and details. So we're in a bookstore, right? So they're talking about books. And then he wanted to move away from that and get down to the good stuff, which is values, motivations, meaning, get there. So we were figuring out what his behavior was in conversation. So whilst he's having the conversation, I'm very, very close. I'm like around the corner, listening in. And then we'll talk after, and I'll tell him what I'm noticing. So, for example, with him, I was noticing that he was deviating, and he was actually pushing all the responsibility onto the other person to speak. So he would ask a lot of questions, or he would share facts and advice, and he never noticed it before. But this is a very key common trait in a lot of people, where you don't want to be vulnerable. So you lead the conversation, you seem really confident, and the person never noticed that you were afraid or anything, but actually the whole time you're afraid of sharing your own beliefs. So that was really interesting to pick him up on that and help him explore. When he knew that, he was like, oh, right, like he's really active. And once you tell him, you tell him what's going on, he's like ready to change and like do the next challenge. So I don't know if that gives you a kind of insight into what goes on in the session.
Yeah, interesting. So in your introduction part was also like the whole identity, kind of like identity shaping you do. So coming again from like, like this removing the mask, what is it you find, and how do you help them shape, and into what do you shape it, I think?
So identity is very close to mindset. And this is your perspective on the world. So what we first start doing is delving into how they view the world every single day and how they view themselves. So that comes back to what I mentioned before, the limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm stupid. And I'm saying these like, I don't know these. I know these limiting beliefs very well. They used to be my own. I used to believe that I was incredibly stupid, and I wasn't allowed to have conversations with people I deemed to be very intelligent, which was pretty much anyone except myself. So yeah, I know these limiting beliefs very well, and limiting being the core word, that they held me back massively. So we explore what's holding them back, in what areas they're holding them back, and then start building tools of how they can transfer those negative thoughts into something that can help them build their self-belief. So for example, I have personal affirmations that I read out every morning, that turn into something like, I am loving, I'm creative, I enjoy creating work with others, I enjoy collaborating. It can be very, very small things to very kind of emotional things.
Yeah.
So we work on that, and specifically on identity, working out how they view themselves. So this comes to labels, right? So how they label themselves. And any label can be powerful, but it can be powerful in a motivating way, in a positive way, or it can be powerful in a negative way, in that it boxes your mindset into thinking you are and you have to be that thing. So for example, I used to call myself a yogi, and then when I went 2 weeks without doing yoga, I thought, oh my god, I'm a terrible person, because I'm not being a yogi anymore.
Yeah, because you didn't fulfill your own like high benchmark you set to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Same with many other things. And now when people ask me if I am a thing, so they label it, so they'll say to me, so you're an improviser or you're a comedian? I'll say, no, I like to do improv. So I'll just change it into an activity that I like to do, instead of using it as a label.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important point, because I found for me the biggest change in my own development was when I realized, I just take any example, like for example, you made a mistake, right? Rather than thinking I am a mistake, I made a mistake, so that you detach yourself from whatever this label or this thing is, and just realize you're more than that. Your behavior,
Right.
and I think especially because I feel often we label ourselves so quickly, as you said. I think the example you just gave, a very brave one to share, by the way, but I think loads of us, if not everyone, has their own labels in their head, right? Like in one way or another. Not everyone is probably aware of it, but I always feel when I do the coaching with my clients, we say there's no right or wrong with personality. But obviously there is a right or wrong with like behavior, so it might not be appropriate, or the thinking might be not efficiently or like not good for you to reach your purpose. So yeah, I found it really interesting that you got into the whole label kind of area. So
Yeah, and it's incredible that you can even notice that, what you just said of, it's not I am a mistake, I just made a mistake. And that's amazing. And I think, just talking about it now, that for some, that would be really difficult to even notice. And for some, like you just said, they're not aware of it. That is the first step. You may be working on awareness for a very long time. And that is one of the number one rules, number one kind of mantras I say in my workshop is, I get a lot of people coming in wanting to take action, and they want results now. And I say, look, you're already doing it. Awareness is action, and people don't value that so much. So I really try to make that a strong point, because people want that result instantly. And it's so amazing just being aware that you are creating action. When you're sitting there thinking, why is this not working? You're trying right there. And so easy to just miss that.
Absolutely. But I think also so when I started this whole journey in coaching, this label awareness was like, you become more self-aware. And I find this, sorry, my dog is snoring, by the way. I don't know if you can.
I can't hear.
Okay. But I find this whole label about like self-awareness is so abstract, because what does that even mean? And I feel this is the hardest work probably as a coach. I don't know if you would agree, but I find it so difficult to give meaning to the word awareness, and what does it mean in a day-to-day context.
Yeah, I think I haven't delved into this word, but when anyone ever brings up the definition of a word, it suddenly starts to not mean anything. But you're completely right. It's so, how do I describe awareness? If I put it into some sort of tangible form, or how I got there, it would have been from journaling, conversations, being vulnerable. Because when I started being honest and vulnerable about my insecurities in conversations, in that moment, I started being honest with myself about them, right? Because I hadn't sat down and admitted them to myself. So a lot of verbalizing, word vomit. And when I say journaling, similarly, I don't always write my journals, I voice journal them. So I'll just talk to my recorder and see what comes out. So for me, that's how I would describe the journey to awareness. Basically just talking about everything that's going on in my mind as much as
and I think it's also like reflecting on, you know, what you journaled, or like becoming aware of. I just said aware for awareness. But, you know, like start to notice, I think, certain habits, certain patterns in your behavior. But yeah, I think especially also the vulnerable part is, it's just so challenging. Like I just did an intro for this whole series we're currently filming, and I spoke about my motivation, why I did it. And I never thought I would do it, actually, because it's so far out of my comfort zone. But I thought, you know what, it's just way more important to give context rather than protect my own ego, I think. So I did it. But I think it's so often this, you know, even if when we are aware, it's so difficult to then be like, okay, I just go back to your example, like, you know, I'm actually, I have the right to speak up and to be heard. You know, to you said you do it with like positive affirmations, but I think this is like probably the most challenging part, because it sounds always so easy, you know, especially when you've done it, you share your story, and it's incredibly difficult to also keep doing it, because it just takes a while, you know. How long did your own journey take for you?
It's not done. It's and it's not easy. You touch on really good points, and that's kind of why I wanted to touch on it, because we're both talking about how we're picking up on our limiting beliefs really quickly, and it's not easy. I think I found out I had depression maybe a year and a half ago, but I must have started my personal development about 5-6 years ago. From the moment I decided to move abroad to China by myself. That was probably a pivotal point for me. And it's not easy. So I can say I woke up this morning feeling depressed and demotivated. And I was questioning it, and I was like, what is going on? Because I thought when I overcame...
Oh, you were just...
all coming in.
Oh, no. Sorry.
It's okay.
We followed until you depressed this morning and you were challenging it.
Yeah, so I originally thought, when I realized I had depression, I worked on it, I thought I overcame it and it was gone. But actually, my thoughts on it now is that I think it will always be there as a part of me. And what I've actually done is develop tools to overcome it every day. Because the fact that I fell into this mindset that I know so well this morning was really surprising to me. And that's why I want to say, you know, it's not, the journey isn't like you get over this mountain and then it's just like free flowing from there. I really feel like it's like this.
That will be the next mountain.
And I didn't say to myself, oh no, like, why am I in this mindset today? I've done everything wrong. It wasn't that. It was just, wow, okay, maybe this is something I have to work on really regularly. And that's probably why I've developed those affirmations that I read out every morning. That's one of the tools that how I get kind of overcome, get rid of the depression.
Yeah, and I think especially like something like depression is, it won't, you know, it sometimes just doesn't go away. I think, like, from personal experience, I always say it's like having ugly knees. Like you can, you can dress in a different way to cover them up, but they are part of you, right? Like it's part of who you are, so you have to learn to live with it. And I think especially then for me, because I mean I had quite severe depression as well, and still sometimes do. And I think accepting that this is part of you but it's not who you are is already the same, detaching yourself from the thing, rather than putting the label on, like, oh yeah, you're the depressed one, right? Which is not true. You just sometimes struggle with depression.
Right. I would never say I'm a depressive. I would say I have or had depression.
Yeah. And I think also, especially probably for me, was also quite a turning point, like moving abroad. Was it for you where you said, like, were you challenged by the very strong, like, cultural differences, or was it more the fact that you left your comfort zone or your familiar surroundings?
A bit of everything that you just mentioned. I had built up 3 years of work experience in marketing in London, marketing, media, journalism. And so the first part was abandoning all of that and saying no to this corporate ladder. The second was leaving behind my family and kind of community that I felt I had in London. And third was then diving into a brand new community of people where I didn't necessarily fit in, and feeling like the odd one out. So in China, you get stared at a lot as a Westerner. They're not afraid to look at you, and so you do feel like the odd one out. And I guess I kind of got used to that, and that's why that contributed a lot to my own social confidence, because now if I want to talk to a stranger on the tube and everyone else is looking, or yesterday when I was eating sushi on the tube and I was like, why not? And I had like 3 people staring at me, and they was just staring right at you, right, because you're opposite. It doesn't seem to faze me anymore.
But to be fair, sometimes you don't know where to look at otherwise, because you can't look at, like, in anyone's eyes, and you have walls, the windows are covered.
Right. So I'm just like, well, if they want to look, they can. So yeah, it definitely got me used to being stared at, feeling like the odd one out. And it pushed my comfort zone massively into jumping into a new community of expats. So I had to create a whole new network of friends. And I had to create them fast because I was alone and I wanted to socialize. I didn't want to be lonely, stuck in my flat in Beijing. Like, who would do that? I wanted to go out and be immersed, and I wanted to learn. I needed recommendations. I wanted a tutor because I wanted to start learning Mandarin. I needed a job. I needed all these things. So
Yeah, I think especially like also like where you don't know the maybe the language, and where the culture is so far from like the own culture. That's a big challenge. Yeah. But also, like, I think very interesting point on your on your journey that you can now share with others. And I was like, maybe being aware of the time, but one last point I would really like to touch with you is because I find it so interesting. So when you are in a different like cultural kind of situation, kind of different culture in general, I think you have your own like cultural identity, your own identity of like, norms, environments, etc. So having challenged this with like, going abroad, going to Beijing and then coming back, how did you adapt to these, like, I think maybe like cultural shock in a certain degree, and then coming back, which could be obviously another cultural shock because suddenly you're back home, when people have not your experiences, because for them nothing has changed in this year or how long you've been. How did you deal with that?
You're completely right. Someone told me the term for this before. There's a term for culture shock that you get when you come back home.
Yeah, I don't know the term, but I know it's real.
Yeah, gosh. It was so bizarre. because in Beijing, first I became free in what I could wear. So I don't know, the city was very dirty. The Asian style was very different, and I got influenced by it. And so some days I would just walk out just wearing anything, like mismatch, that felt very mismatched to me. So that was one thing, coming back and being like, oh, what do I wear? Do I keep doing what I was doing? It's really interesting, because I really do think it can be easy to feel like you should dress according to the people around you that you're with, because we want to be part of the community. So the first thing was dress. The second thing, which was really funny, is in Beijing, they don't mind where they drive on what side of the road. So they do have two distinct sides. But
oh my God, I'm glad you made it home.
You will get people driving down the wrong side, so cars as well, and because the roads are so big that on like the side lanes you'll get people going down the opposite side. And so as a bike, on a bike, you can do that, and it's fine. You can go down the opposite end of the road. You can drive the opposite way down a road anytime. And I remember coming back to London, and the addition to this was you can pass by red lights. So they don't abide by red or green lights. They just go if they can go. And then I came back to London on my bike, and I did this. I went straight past a red light, past a police car, it was just there waiting at the red light, and I just went right past them, and they were like, what the hell? Like, instantly rang their siren and stopped me, and they were like, that's a red light. And we were just sitting right there. They were just obviously so insulted at how rude. Yeah, like how rude I was. And I didn't even realize, because in Beijing, the police cars wouldn't stop you for that. They would just drive right past with you. So I didn't register that the police car would even care. And the third thing, socially, I guess, which came back with me, I don't know, it was a bit of a shock, but I took back my skills of going out at night by myself or during the day, going to a bar or a restaurant, talking to people, going to events and meeting new people. I took this kind of traveler mindset back to London. And that was probably the most useful to me. But yes, it was a shock, because I didn't know. I knew I left a different person, and I came back with this different mindset. And it was a shock, because I know other people around don't behave like that. And I would have had some responses from other people, like friends, that like, it's really weird to do that. So there was a bit of shock there, but I'm so grateful for that.
But I feel like also because they see, like your friends see the direct comparison, the Isla who was there, and then the one who came back.
Yeah.
Because I feel like oneself doesn't even realize how much we change and transform in these kind of experiences, right? Like it just happens, and I mean you're gradually in it, so yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, super interesting to verbalize as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, thank you so much. I could talk to you about this forever, but again, I'm a bit time conscious. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any like final tip or final words you would like to leave us with?
I think, I want to say thank you so much for having me on the interview. And
Pleasure.
I think I want to leave with, awareness is action. You're trying your best every single day. If you're wondering if you're doing enough, you are doing enough. So that's what I wanted to leave it with.
No, I love that, especially like this awareness is action. We feel so often like we're lazy bastards who don't do anything, but we do. So thank you so much for those great words, and thank you so much for your time and sharing with us your story, and making London a more connected and socially pleasant place.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye for now.